I think we are live. Just let me confirm from your profile. Yep. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. We are here on the same hour that we promised. This time, we are not gonna owe anything before the weekend. We made to our schedule. Uh, so I hope you have read everything that we published this week, and we're gonna recap it the way we did last week. I see five people joining in. Please let us know from where you are joining. I am Aisha. I work with Dr. Garner and I am from Pakistan. It's almost middle of the night here, but I'm here to give the information that will blow your mind. I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Garner now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It always feels like there's just like so much to say, and then I get here and I'm like, oh, I don't even know. I don't know what to
As
start.
soon as it says live, yeah,
I
we
don't know where to
just
start. Yeah. Um, we have uh, a couple of kind of exciting things. So we should have our newsletter for this week starting tomorrow. Um, hopefully that will be helpful. We want to hear feedback from everyone in terms of if they like the new format, if this is something that we should keep or toss or change. So please let us know. So the prior two lives, we covered the dismantling of prams and Title X. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about something in the same vein but different, and that is medication shortages. We take a lot for granted in this country that things that we need, especially if they're life-saving things, that they will just be available. Um, and that kind of the luxury of being able to take that for granted was an infrastructure of people who were quietly working behind the scenes to make sure that that happened, right? We had an extensive administrative state and whatever people want to say about the federal government, it was critical in giving us the standard of living that we, have been used to in this country for the better part of the last 50 years. And in less than I don't know, it hasn't even been 2 years. Has it been 2 years yet? In this presidency? No, it hasn't. It just feels
almost, yeah.
like
It feels
almost 2 years.
like it.
Um, you know, uh, After, a very prolonged amount of time of the, conservative legal movement making small chips at the administrative state. We're now seeing, you know, um, the damage that happens when nobody's watching for those things that we used to take for granted, like if the medication that you need is going to be on the shelf. That's what we wanted to highlight today. We focused on obviously, medications used in obstetrics and childbirth, but it's not limited to that at all. There are chemotherapeutic drugs that are in shortages. These are things people need to survive, to treat disease. Missing doses affects outcomes very, very concretely. And we are, you know, for the first time, I think since the pandemic was like a kind of a special situation, but definitely in my medical career, I'm not, I haven't been practicing for that long, but um, we're actually having to kind of think about the supply chain on a very regular basis. And it's for a lot of things. It's for fluids. It's for electrolyte repletion. It's for things that you used to take for granted, you can't, and that's scary as a provider, because I can be the best doctor and take excellent care of my patient. But I'm not a magician, right? If I don't have the medications that they need, then I can't do my job. And so, this is a part of the same, thesis. This is our kind of third, concrete piece of evidence that the systems are working as designed. And the design we're going to talk about is a code card with half the drugs in it. And the line I want people to think about is you can't run a hemorrhage protocol on medications that aren't in the building. These drugs that we use, to save women in childbirth are generic, right? A lot, these are old drugs. I mean, that's one of the downsides of, in the, women's reproductive health space. It's like we're getting hit from both ends, right? Because we don't have any new innovation. And so,
What we
because
had is
people don't
going
invest in
away.
research. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then also like now the old stuff, like the stuff that's literally, should be pennies to make, is also not available. And it's like how can we how can we be in both situations simultaneously? But the absence of these drugs, it's not an economic problem, right? This is a political one. And so in labor and delivery, if anyone's has ever been in a childbirth, one of the things that can be the most shocking is how much women bleed. And it's rare that people have seen that much blood ever in kind of one place. That's why it's not uncommon for people to like pass out, in deliveries. We see it happen all the time with dads. We see them kind of start to sway, and they get that like glassy look, and we're like, oh, he's going down, he's going down. And then usually a nurse can come and get like a chair behind him, but that has definitely happened. That dads have passed out, and we now we have a whole another situation. We have another medical team, attending to this poor gentleman. But women can bleed a lot. It We define a postpartum hemorrhage to be a liter of blood loss. And so if you think of um, what a liter of blood loss is, grab like a 2 liter cut, Coke, and then cut it in half. And that's when we consider it a hemorrhage. That's when we actually consider it a medical problem. In a vaginal delivery, a normal delivery would be something around like 2 to 300 cc's. And we used to have two definitions which made no sense, where like the postpartum hemorrhage threshold for a C-section was a liter, and then for a vaginal delivery, it was only 500 cc's. But we've since gotten away with that, which is makes more sense because it's fundamentally the same woman. But the take home point is you bleed a lot, right? And for some perspective, like if you were wondering like how much blood does someone have in their body, you have about like 5 liters in your body. And so you could lose like 20% of that in a delivery. And so that's a lot, right? And when it goes out of control, like when you're in a severe hemorrhage, that looks like someone has, you know, um, you know, uh, turned on a fire hose and like attached your cardiovascular system. It literally looks like blood just streaming down. I mean, there's nothing like it. To see that happening. The most severe hemorrhage I've ever seen, I think we went through, I want to say like 50 bags of blood. Um, she would not have survived if she was not in a large medical center. I mean, she was, I think, she was in, one of the Harvard teaching hospitals. So, this is as good as medical care gets. And even that was obviously, very traumatizing for
Very
the
common, yeah.
entire team. That's replacing someone's blood volume like 10 times. Um, Anywhere else in the world, she would have been dead, except in very few places. I just remember like, people actually holding the blood. Like we had medical students holding the bags of blood and squeezing. the blood, right? Because you need to go, it can only go so fast through gravity, right? And they're literally, we had people squeezing bags of blood, right? Until she was able to, get a hysterectomy, and the bleeding obviously went under, eventually resolved, and the patient survived. You know, thank God most hemorrhages aren't like that. Most hemorrhages are somewhere between like a liter and 2 liters. But when you are in this sort of situation, time is of the essence.
Mm.
And you don't want to be using your medications when you're in a hemorrhage. Like these are, you know, I will start calling for medications, well before that point. Uh, because obviously the medications take time to administer, to take time for the nurses to pull, take time to take effect. And the difference between 5 minutes and 7 minutes could be, you know, I, we're able to resolve it here in the room versus I need to go to the operating room, right? It really is something that needs to be done urgently. And
Mm.
so to think that these medications could not be I have luckily I haven't had any personal situations where one of the hemorrhage medication was not available. But I have had that situation for magnesium. And it is simultaneously incredibly infuriating. You're just like in this situation, and you're like the patient is looking to you to, like, obviously to help them, to keep them safe. And you're angry. I'm like fear, but it's just like I don't even know who to be angry at. I'm just like
Common
angry.
thing, right? They want your help using the most common thing that should be available
Yeah,
all over
I
the
mean,
facilities.
these are, yeah. I mean, I was literally shocked. I mean, what was shocking? I mean, one, it was shocking that it wasn't available, but what was more shocking is that nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
I was like, did I just like lose my mind? And I literally had a moment where I'm like, did 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 we like stop you? Like, did the new guideline come out? Like, I mean,
Someone would
I was
have
just like,
their entire job to make sure that the stocks are filled, right? Like
like
the actual job.
they had never heard of it. They had never heard of IM magnesium. I mean, I was shocked, but you're kind of in this situation, and you're like,
What do I tell the patient?
what do I do? Like, what do I do? Like, if you've never heard of it, like it's like, well, I mean, at first I was like, surely we must be just using a different name. Like, and for a while, I was like, what do you mean you never heard of it? And this is a patient I was trying to prepare to. Obviously, she needed to get transferred to a larger hospital. That was obvious.
Hmm.
But I, needed to be able to do that safely. And we couldn't get any intravenous access because her vasculature was so constricted, and like no one was able to get a line.
Hmm.
And so the solution was, okay, well, if we can't give her magnesium IV, then just give her some IM, put her in the ambulance, and try to get her down here as quickly as possible. But we didn't even have IM. Luckily we were able to track down an anesthesiologist, because the attending anesthesiologists don't they're not in the hospital. 24/7. And so, it was even to the point where I'm just like, do I need to start learning how to do? Because obviously in training, you do things that, like OBs don't put in central lines. Like that we don't, I mean, like we're not licensed to do that, right? But I'm like, do I need to start like learning how to do this? Do I need to start, like expanding my scope of practice if I'm going to work in rural settings? And I mean that's something we actually have thought about, from the DA side, just in the, like birth worker, shortage, because it's not just the OBs that are short, right? It's anesthesiologists. And if you have a labor floor that's not staffed 24/7 with an anesthesiologist, and you're in a real emergency, um, uh, your options could be doing C-sections under local anesthesia. I thank God I've never had to be in that situation. But I mean, I, could you imagine something
I
that horrifying?
cannot.
I could, like,
No.
it's just like, like, there's not enough local anesthesia in the world to make that anything except complete.
People would have experienced it, right? I mean, the things are getting worse. I mean, somewhere someone would have been in that situation, and the only
Oh
option.
no, people have done it. No, 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 people have done it. I've like older providers, who practice in these settings, they've been in situations where they did not have anesthesia. And what are you supposed to do? Just let the baby die? Like you
That
can't,
is
right?
the choice, right?
And so you got, you got to do what you got to do. But like, that's, that's essentially doing surgery on someone with some lidocaine. And it's torture. And yeah, it's torture. Um,
The best moments of your life can turn into a like lifelong trauma, and you just cannot imagine having that, right?
well, that's why so many women have obstetrical trauma. It's a real category of trauma.
Mm,
Uh,
that's a
of
new thing
these,
that I learned.
yeah, yeah. No, it's not uncommon. People who need like emergency C-sections, they had, either, bad shoulder dysocias or major hemorrhages
Hmm.
or, whatever, like, something that requires an extraordinary amount of intervention. And that intervention itself is traumatic. There's not a good way of taking someone for an emergency C-section that is not traumatic. The what we have to do as the like healthcare team is, you know, you need to deal with the trauma afterwards, right? You can't just brush it
Hmm.
off. It's a real thing. People usually wake up exactly how they go to sleep. And so if someone's like screaming, when they're going to sleep, they'll wake up screaming, and it's one of the most like discombobulating things, right? Because you, um, you know, you eh, you need to act, right? And most of the time you're able to, like, most of the time things are not so emergent that
Hmm.
you can't, take a minute or two to like explain what's going on. There are very, very rare situations where it's like, we're literally, minutes matter. Most of the time we have some time. But I've definitely been in situations where, somebody is, that's things are moving so quickly, or the person's just not in the right frame of mind. If you're very, very emotional, if you're very, um, if you're in a extreme amount of pain, if you're very sick,
Hmm.
you can't make reasonable decisions. That's why having a healthcare proxy is critical,
Hmm.
in pregnancy. Like you need to have someone who you designate as your decision maker. It is not that rare that we're having to go to other people, and not because the person's not alive, right? They might be alive, but they're just not in a frame of mind where they can make, um, where they're able to articulate their decisions, right? And so, um, a healthcare proxy is like really important, for helping us achieve that. Because if we can't get that, if we can't get consent, right, from somebody, then we're in a situation where we're in a lot of trouble,
Where
essentially.
you are in the trouble. Yeah, the physician is in the trouble. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you need to do something, and like
You need to act and you have the consent. Yeah,
you
I get it.
yeah, but you need, you don't, you're, a lot of the consent in obstetrical care is done ahead of time for that reason. Explain to people like, a good admission process, is explain to people like these are the situations that we can end up in. So I would definitely, if people don't read all that documentation they give you, I would, because it usually the consent forms will go through all the different scenarios of, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens,
Mhm.
to give you some sense of, what the possibilities are, but also, that things might move really quickly.
I see 14 people have joined us, and almost all of them are women. So if you guys have any questions regarding any point of discussion, please shoot your questions in the chat. I'll definitely pass them along to Dr. Connor. So, Dr. Connor, just to help me understand, we talked about the shortages of medicines, a lot of them. Do you think it's a supply chain matter? It's a supply chain problem, or is it something else?
You know, it's not directly a supply chain problem. The supply chain is politically compromised. You can think of it that way.
Mm,
The the real supply chain problems we saw during the pandemic, that's not what's affecting us now. So now, it's really, we don't have an FDA and CDC and all those other agencies that used to monitor this, right?
mm,
The FDA monitors national manufacturing output. It is important, for, it's particularly for medications that are not, uh, big blockbuster meds, that nobody's getting rich off of misoprostol, right? Nobody's making a lot of money off of these things. They're the medications we need in order to keep the, healthcare system functioning.
mm,
And so, the federal government is critical, in that. The other big issue is that misoprostol, in particular, has been swept into, abortion regulation. And so pharmacists in some states are refusing to dispense it, for like complete routine obstetrical indications. And so we're talking about that more,
mm,
in our articles this week. But it's a real problem. And so the combination of those two things, is, creating the situation that we're in. And so if you are, what that means practically, if you are in an acute clinical situation, you're having to make substitution decisions in real time, while a patient is actively bleeding, and thinking also about the risks, of, not all the medications are available to all patients. Some of them are contraindicated, meaning you can't use it in certain patients.
mm,
And then you add on just these preventable absences. It takes us, a situation that was bad before, but we know how to manage and triage, in medicine, and makes it to something that, is now unnecessarily putting women at risk.
mm. And that's happening like too fast, like in the moment.
Yeah,
That
I mean, it just, yeah, I mean, I think it's just the accumulation of things, right? The accumulation of things that the system has to think about that we never had to think about before. This is when mistakes happen. When the medicine runs on routine.
mm,
What makes medicine safe, is, people get used to doing certain things a certain way, and then it just kind of, it's almost like muscle memory.
mm,
The more you take the medical system off of their routines, the more dangerous it becomes, right? Because then people are making active decisions,
mm,
when you don't want them to be necessarily having to do all that cognitive, processing. Right, because in an emergency, your cognitive, your ability to like do that complex processing goes down acutely, right? You are running on adrenaline, a different way of thinking and processing completely takes over. And so if you are now making people, use medications that they're not familiar with, or having to go find things because they're like on back order, or whatever sort of disruptions, that of course is going to have an effect.
Mm. I know you're not a pharmacist, but these generic and very important drugs like oxytocin, I mean, we talk about it like very regularly, magnesium, are they interchangeable with something else?
Some of them are, but not in the way that, you can think of them, as like, they're kind of grades. We have
Mhm.
protocols, and we use one and then use another, then you use another, and you use another. And it's kind of an ordered system. And oxytocin is our kind of, that's our workhorse.
Mm,
That's the same. We induce labor with that medication.
mm,
We augment labor with that medication. We give that medication in order to prevent bleeding, right? Like that's one of the most common medications that we use in the OB world. And then after that, we have misoprostol, or medication called Cytotec. People kind of know it more by the generic name.
mhm,
And then we have two other medications that are kind of in the standard toolkit, but both of them have certain contraindications. One is not, you don't use it in women who are hypertensive.
mm,
And so if you think about, women who have preeclampsia, uh, that's not an appropriate medication. But the other kind of thing to remember is that hypertensive disease of pregnancy in itself, it gives you an increased risk of bleeding.
mm.
So those are precisely the women that you need to make sure that you have the medication of, you have alternatives available for. And then the last kind of one is has another the big contraindication for one of the medications asthma, like any kind of respiratory, like constrictive disease, or reactive airway disease, is contraindicated for that medication. And so if a woman has asthma and then she's also hypertensive, we're really limited in the medications that we can provide. There are other things that we use in um, you know, for management of postpartum bleeding.
Mhm.
But they're not uterotonics, which means those are the uterotonics, that those are the class of medication that affects the way the uterus contracts and helps the uterus, kind of clamp down. Because if you think about it, right, you have a baby, your uterus is probably what, this big, and within minutes it kind of goes down to about that big. And that's what keeps you from bleeding to death. If your uterus does not like firm up and become like essentially like a hard little ball,
Mm.
you will bleed to death. And that process is what those medications help promote.
We're gonna stop here for a minute. That's whatever we discussed till now is from Signal last week. If you want to read more about it, I'm gonna put the link in the chat. After this, we're gonna move forward to our last week's briefing. If anyone has any questions, I know we're talking about birth right now, but that's what the most important topic for a woman. Someone with no child yet, I am scared, but yeah, I'm learning a lot. So if anyone has questions, we are here, and we're gonna move towards what we published for briefing last week, the MPT code card.
Yeah, I think I update the briefing. I want to say I updated it. Did I talk about uh um gosh, why can't I think of the word? Like cisplatin shortages. Did we
I
talk
think
about
a
that
little
one?
bit. Yeah. I think very limited,
Um,
but
I know I can't remember everything I wrote because we do a couple of waves of revisions. Um, I it might not have made it to the final version, but um, the medications that are on shortage. I think we begun the hour talking about this. It's not limited just to these obstetrical drugs.
mm,
There's a cisplatin shortage. The medication we use to treat. Um, Now I'm curious. Can you pull it up? I'm curious about the version we ended up publishing. Bicillin, the penicillin that is used to treat syphilis. These all these medications are on shortage, right? And the list is not limited to just that. And you know, I I think uh, one of the things we were hoping people would take away from the article was just the complexity of how a medication actually ends up on your pharmacy shelf. It's not the simple transaction of a company makes a pill and then your doctor writes a prescription and then the pharmacy fills it. That should be how the process works, but the reality is that the federal government is really load bearing a kind of every kind of way through that chain. And so the FDA is responsible for inspecting the plants. The CDC tracks disease that drive the demand, right? Because um, uh, we have to know will we have, if surges are coming in certain diseases, then we'll need more of a certain medication. Like that's information that we need to know ahead of time, right? So that we can
mm,
prepare. And that's why this disease monitoring is so important. CMS, of course, sets the hospital payments that determine um, you know, whether we can afford to, actually stock the drugs, right?
mm,
The free market does not solve this problem, particularly if it is if it's a drug that nobody makes money from, right?
mm,
Which again, like some of the most important drugs are that way. Excuse me. And so, when the profit incentives run in the opposite direction from what's going to, keep people safe and healthy, that is the role of the federal government. And unfortunately, the people in who are supposed to be keeping eyes on things, like who are those people? Like it's, a vaccine skeptic. We have a TV doctor. Um, you know, uh, HHS is run by a man who like has spent his, I don't know if you call it a career, or I don't, but you could say his career, questioning
mm,
antidepressants, I mean, it's questioning, all sorts of some of the most important kind of thresholds of medical care. And the other one is a TV personality who he has built a fortune on selling. Oh my kids. Um, he's built a fortune selling supplements and other you know pseudoscience, pseudo medicine things. And so it shouldn't really be that surprising that we're in this situation.
mm.
Um, but again, it's just like it's so disheartening.
Frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating, it's disheartening, and it's, yeah.
For the audience and for myself, of course, how drugs actually get to the shelf. I mean, in my head, it's like they get made and they just put it in the pharmacy through a chain. If the process is that simple, I don't understand the problem in between. But again, as you mentioned, it's deep enough to learn about it.
Right. So, all of these things are, happen for a reason, right? So, there was like for bicillin, for example, I think there were like three manufacturers and like one left the market. And then the other had some, I don't know, maybe like failed an inspection. Um, and so like just like that, like you lose, we had three and now you have one.
Mm,
And obviously that's gonna lead to a shortage. In a lot of these areas, we don't have reserve. I mean, that's what we learned in COVID, right? We're not operating with a lot of reserve here. Uh, because reserve takes money, right? Reserve takes someone thinking ahead of time.
mm,
The reserve takes planning. And so if you don't have reserve capacity when things, when something goes wrong, which inevitably they will, then it's going to lead to um,
mm,
it's going to lead to shortages. And the problem is, you know, had the healthcare system has had several big hits, right?
mm,
Least to mention now RFK is like the final kind of nail in the coffin. We were already like a struggle, I just finished a piece about I don't even think you've read it yet, about our healthcare system. Um, because if you step back and just think about it, it's just truly absurd. Like we are the most expensive we are the most expensive healthcare system in the developed world, and we give the worst outcome. We sell the worst product, right?
mm,
The analogy I use is like, you're paying for a Maserati, but you get a Toyota Corolla. And in no other business, there's no other industry would that be acceptable. You would just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I paid for the thing. And then the thing that like, adds insult to injury is like, and then your house gets repossessed because you're in, you're driven to bankruptcy because you can't, you're not able to pay the Maserati prices, but you for your Toyota Corolla, right? um, People have to remember like the number one cause of bankruptcy in the US is healthcare debt, is from healthcare, right? We're the only developed nation, we're the richest country in the world. I just want people to sit with that. We're the richest country in the world. We're the only developed nation with our resources that doesn't guarantee everyone health insurance. And the the society we see around us is a direct reflection of that, right? We are, whatever anyone wants to tell you about socialism, like it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. We pay more because of it. I mean, you can see it in the numbers, right? We are spending, we are less healthy. We all spend more. Um, uh, it is an inferior product in every way conceivable. Yet we continue to accept it. And it is, don't believe the hype is what I tell people. Like, don't believe the hype. Like it's bullshit that we can't have a better system. It's absolute bullshit. It just doesn't make any sense, right? Like it's just, people will talk about like complexity and yada yada yada, and like people, you can read books and it'll be so, it's so hard, like people build their careers on this, and it's just, oh my god, all of this, and it's like, no, no, I'm sorry, like stop trying to gaslight me, and stop trying to explain to me
Mm.
what it is, because when a system is fucked up, when it's not working, you have to say it's not working. And we have proven unambiguously that it's not working. People are dying and they're on their way to death. They're
Mhm.
going bankrupt. Like, I mean, I just like can't. It's just like it just like it's just no,
And if
it just
they're
doesn't.
in their sane mind is denying that fact, they are not in their sane
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, you're just not you're not interested. I'm sorry. Like you can't paper that over. Don't give me complexity. Don't give me all this stuff. Don't give me health, whatever. Don't give me socialized medicine. Don't give me any of that bullshit, right? What you are giving me, right, is instead is a product that is unequivocally the worst. And then you're trying to give me a reasons and
The
explain to
first
me
world country.
how, like, I'm actually this is actually good for me. It's not good for me. It's not good for me at all. It's not good for anyone. Even the richest people get worse health care in our system. The only people who seem to be doing well are the people who are getting rich, right? And there are very few of those people. Um, yeah, it's just the more I learn about like the finance of the healthcare, the more aggravating it is. Because we also have other models that work really well
Mm.
in our country, right? Like TRICARE is a good example. The healthcare that we give like um, the U.S. military is excellent, right? It's excellent healthcare. We know how to do it at scale. And don't give me bullshit like we can't give it to everyone. Forget that, right? We decide to spend 3 times more because you don't want to give people healthcare insurance. You decide then like we all have to just suffer indefinitely. It literally makes no sense at
Bad
all.
for the people with the insurance. You just cannot imagine what's happening with the people with no insurance. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
so tell
mean,
how much
yeah.
you paid for your sample. I mean, we have told this story a couple of times, but this is very fresh and it happened to you firsthand, right? I think they
Oh
charge you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My $2,000 UTI.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I, you know,
insane for me.
And this is me as a provider. I was like literally working in the hospital. I'm on call, so it's not like I can go anywhere else, right? Like I'm here, I'm stuck here, like I'm trapped here. You literally, I cannot leave because I am working, and um, you know, uh, and then I get a $2,000 bill. I'm like, man, like, after you net the cost of my UTI and my shit, like, it's like, oh, I essentially did not, I essentially worked for free that
Yeah, you just wanted
day.
to
Because whatever I made on that shift, it went right back to the hospital system. I'm like, isn't that a great, it's not a perfect system. But it's just, it's really, we're laughing, but we're coming out with our what we hope is going to be like a yearly report on the state of women and children in the US, called Architecture of Harm, where we go through in 14 chapters and really just lay out the data for everyone. And I obviously I'm biased because I put it together and me and my team put it together, but um, I think it will convince people.
Oh, it's
Uh,
gonna make a
you know,
difference. In the things we are learning for a medical system, the things that we do research like day and night, and the things that we are finding, if they can amaze us, they're gonna definitely put people into a stance that how is this even possible? The strategy, the thought process behind those doings, it's not like coincidence. They are making systems to fail. They are actually designing systems to fail.
Yeah. And it's hard to, yeah. I think what was compelling for me um is when we actually just laid it out in one case, just like, system by system, looking at, maternal mortality,
Hmm.
but then looking at healthcare costs, then looking at the birth worker crisis, and then looking at the state of children, and then looking at mental health, looking at the opioid crisis, right? And then looking at incarceration, and then looking at the immigration crisis, and just laid it one by one by one by one.
A flow.
Um,
People would
and
see the
yeah,
whole. Yeah,
yeah.
we were able to see the whole picture. I think it will make people to see the whole picture.
um,
Okay.
because you don't, and then it gives a lot of clarity in terms of like why people are suffering, because it makes sense,
Hmm.
and then you're like, okay, well, yeah, it um the headline numbers that you see, the like, why Black women are three times more likely to die, or why the US maternal mortality crisis is like the worst in the developed world. Like those headline numbers are shocking. But no one ever tells you like the why, like what are the things that are adding up, adding up, adding up, adding up, adding up. And one of them in isolation would just be, unfortunate. But all of them in totality is devastating, and I hope people learn, and actually see kind of where the where our state of affairs are, because it definitely has affected my perspective. The thing that makes our publication process is really like, because we're a healthcare company,
Hmm.
we have all of these internal like QC things, and so before anything goes out, it goes through like, and I mean, I sound like I'm annoyed, like I didn't create the system. Like I created the system that now restrains myself, and it's very annoying. Um, but it's the reason why things take a very long time. And so my hope is that we're able to release it publicly in the next month or so. But we'll start releasing regardless of if we could release the full report, we'll start releasing the underlying data, um, um, soon, like as soon as this week. Just to kind of, tell people what our thoughts are, and why we have kind of formed these opinions, because it matters, because the midterms are coming up. Just, that's the thing that has, expedited a lot of the things that we do, is, we have an election coming up, and we want people to understand what the stakes are, because I guarantee you don't really understand, and not in a disrespectful way, but I didn't understand, right, until I saw everything laid out, and I'm sure there's so much more that I don't know, right, we've only scratched the surface about, but at least what we have found preliminarily has been, quite frightening, and it's the reason like kind of we keep doing the work that we're doing.
Hopefully, yeah. And it's almost in final stages. I'm very hopeful that it will be in front of people very soon. We are already at our 1 hour mark, and people are still here. Thank you for being a part of this. I think the last thing left for us is to recap our signal last week. Sorry,
Viva
Viva
Voce.
Viva was from last week. Yeah,
Let's see. What was the Viva Voce from? I can't remember it.
our Viva was
um,
about the
Oh, I
drug.
think I already started the story. Yeah, it's because I kind of preempted the story.
Yeah.
This was a patient that I took care of myself. And if I hadn't been in this situation, I would have never believed that this was true. Um, because it's such a fundamental thing. Like it's literally the thing that you teach a medical student, like the first, when how do you manage an eclamptic seizure? Like what's the state, what's the emergency medication regimen? And you tell them about IM Mag. And so the fact that it wasn't available kind of blew my mind. And then the other really annoying thing is because not enough units are, I guess, it can't be ordered in the same way. The most annoying thing is you need like basically like you have to load up for like 5 grams. And so if like each of the bottles only hold uh essentially like basically 1/10 of what you need, and so you're literally having to like, instead of like taking one bottle that has enough medication and filling a syringe and then giving someone a shot, you're taking like 10 bottles and filling a syringe, and like, because each of them has only a small fraction of what you need, because it's not delivered in the way that we need it to be delivered. And so, that was the other quite annoying thing is even when you have the medication that you need, you're like,
Such
you,
a
you literally
terrible
have four
need to talk
nurses
to,
like trying
right?
to draw up the
Yeah,
medications at the
exactly.
same time, because it's an emergency, right? You have someone seizing, right?
And whose
So
time
you
you're
need
wasting? The most
how
prestige
much time? Yeah,
profession. I mean,
yeah.
whose time are you wasting? You're not wasting. I mean, not
Well, I
that.
I didn't I didn't realize why that was the case, but because we don't order it in the same way, right? Because that again, like all these things that determine what's on your floor, has nothing to, like they're not reading like ACOG guidelines, right? These are like manufacturing decisions, and somewhere along the line, it was decided that each of these vials only has 1 cc in there, or whatever, like, whatever volume it has. And, it's not taking into account that if for the obstetrical indications, we need a large dose. And yeah, so
Annoying.
it's very annoying. Um, all right. So I think that is it for today. We have our Noble essay that's going to come out shortly. And we're also launching our Bring the Bolt Cutters. And so, just to kind of recap, the way that we are doing the framing, Noble is our like umbrella kind of campaign that essentially, is trying to help people understand this attack on women. There's the arguments are, can be really complex, and people can, say a whole bunch of things, but it really comes back to um, really essential, if from my perspective, things that are true about human dignity, right?
Mhm.
And that's why we labeled it noble, right? That every human is endowed with a certain dignity for just being alive. And that is why their life needs to be protected. And everything kind of follows from that. And so we walk people down the history of the anti-abortion movement, kind of where the genesis comes from, what the motivations are, and then along kind of 3 pillars. So manufactured is looking at the political lane, bring the bolt cutters, which we're launching probably at this point, maybe tomorrow morning, we'll launch it. Bring the bolt cutters is looking at the all the legal architecture that has gotten us here, and then the crisis to care, are looking at the medical realities of where here is. And again, the goal is to try to help people understand, we did not get here by accident. The situation we're in right now was planned, it's deliberate, it is cruelty and hatred, and all of those things. And, our job now is to mobilize to fight against it. So, and we want to give people whatever tools we can, to kind of do that work in their own communities.
Yeah. And we're coming up with receipts. So there would be no doubt after. It's just a matter of few minutes. I would appreciate if you guys just find those few minutes, read the resources that Labora Collective publishes, because one day or another it will help you to save your, or maybe someone you love, their life. The things that are crucial, they are so there are so minute details that we don't know from the system, that if we take care of them, it can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and one exciting thing is, we finally are getting our membership, like portal set up. And so we're going to be sending that out, sometime this week. I want to say tomorrow, hopefully, if I can get everything together.
Mhm.
But because we do take so long to publish, I wanted to give people essentially, kind of my unfiltered voice, things I wouldn't necessarily post in public. But, if you're interested in some of our findings before, if they've gone through all of the, like all of the quality checks that we have, if you're interested in kind of what we are writing, we have a book on reproductive justice and democracy. We have a book on, GYN care, routine GYN care, just kind of what to expect during a well woman's visit. It's something that every woman has, but nobody talks about. Nobody tells you how to navigate that territory, how to prepare for a GYN surgery. Um, let's see what other things. We have a piece. We have I keep calling it a series, but it's essentially like a book at this point, on, Epstein. We took a very deep dive, from the medical perspective on the, again, like we started writing this like 6 months ago,
Mm.
and have now just kind of, are in a position where we validated, all the findings, and, we can release it. So that's coming out. We are, finally releasing our silent epidemic. So this is a violence against women. It took me so long to finalize it that like I had to do another pass through the data because the data got even worse. Since we first did since we first wrote it, things got even worse. And so, but anyways, the kind of format we're thinking is, more kind of a not stream of thought, but like, more of a, direct hearing from me in our stream. So this would be essays that I'm writing, but also data that we're finding. So, if you're interested in learning more about that, definitely subscribe. And that should be rolling out, shortly. And we have also a lot of other cool things that we're working on that, we're not yet in a position to announce, but, we hope to make some exciting announcements soon.
So excited. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for these lovely 22 people who joined us in this hour. We'll be here again on next Monday to recap what we
Tuesday,
gonna
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday, yes, next Tuesday.
It's 5 a.m. here.
I
So
know, I know.
it's like being in the past. It's Tuesday. Actually, it's Wednesday for me. So
It's
again,
Wednesday. I was about to say, yeah.
so yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday with the new recap. Do give a read whatever we're gonna publish this week. There will be 3 articles coming out through Substack. Each of them have their external links. Click them, read the full report. It takes us a lot. I mean, it looks like a one pager, but it takes us almost like days to to bring those facts to you, which we know that matters a lot. Thank you everyone. We'll be here again. Uh, Bye.
Bye, everyone.